This is Atlas's 36th session. We're going to work on leading and desensitizing to touch near the mounting block. So I'm going to start off with just leading. So I'm just having him draw toward me first. So I'm just going to put some pressure on his hindquarters there with my black driving whip. He faces me. See, I'm putting pressure on him again to just kind of unlock him and have him go forward. And then once he's going forward, I can kind of spiral here. And he should follow me, again, putting pressure just to get him unlocked and going forward. So this is teaching him to follow my body and to move off of the pressure of my whips, which there I had to get a little bit more firm because he was ignoring me and eating the grass, and then it kind of scared him, like, because he was trying to pay attention to something else. So him eating the grass is just more of a calming signal. Like, he's probably a little bit worried with the pressure that I'm putting on him, and he's just trying to calm himself. So he is somewhat ignoring me, and that's where he kind of got a little worried there because he's like, oh, this isn't happening, and then he got afraid of the whips. So it's okay. It's just something that you should point out and notice. He does do it less and less as we move on. So I've started in adding in the positive reinforcement with hay. So there I clicked him and fed him for following off my whips really well. So he was tracking really nicely and he was moving away from the pressure of my whips. So I used that pressure on his hindquarters, like right there, to get him to step over and then go forward. And I also used pressure up near his shoulders to move his shoulders over and work on that. So it's really a bit of both things. Like, the whips don't just mean one thing. And then once he's leading nicely as he follows, then I'm going to have him lead in the regular leading position. And I just move my whips over to the side and have him kind of move forward and over instead. But that driving away from the whips that we used in him drawing toward me leading is still really important. So I'm going to offer him my hand because he knows to come target my hand. And with a little bit of my whips there, he's a little unsure. There he goes forward. And we'll just wait for him. Touch my hand, and I'll click him for that. He just gets a little unsure sometimes and a little afraid. So I got to kind of help him through that and just make him feel like he's doing a good job and then he's safe. So now he's following nicely once he's figured out what I'm doing. So it can be a little difficult to balance the two together. So I was walking him there and he was leading quite nicely. So that's why I clicked him right there as we were just walking, and he's kind of in a really good leading position. But it can be a bit tricky to balance the negative reinforcement and the positive reinforcement. So he gets a little afraid sometimes of the negative reinforcement. I have to go back in, show him, like, here, I've just been holding out my hand and he's just like leaving instead. So he's just a little confused. He's a little unsure. I'm just going to hold out my hand, and when he touches it, I'll click him and feed him. So it's just like a fine line of using too much pressure and then kind of showing him the answer, maybe with the target. So that's what I did with that, was with the leading, was I kind of asked him to move off my whips. He wasn't sure. He wanted to kind of stand there. So then I used my hand, and then he figured out that he could follow it. And for him, he's a lot more frightful and scared and worried. So I find the positive reinforcement really helps him out a lot. I feel like just horses in general, it works really well for all of them, but definitely the ones that are more scared, for sure. It just helps build their confidence. So he's doing pretty good there. He was leading nicely, so I'll click him for that and feed him. Then I'm going to go ahead and desensitize to my whips. So fast forward through that because I've shown that a lot in the past, so we don't need to see a whole long video about that. So I'm just kind of doing some arcs and some turns and seeing if he'll just kind of follow by me. He got a little lost there. He wanted to go the other way, but he didn't run off. He just listened to what I was doing and asking him to do, and he just followed those whips and kept on going. Then I tried to ask him to come back to my right, and he just kind of trotted through that little gap between me and the fence. I'm just like, no, just come back this other way. But he doesn't run off and get real worked up. He's just trying to figure it out what I want. So that's really good. So once he gets in position here, I click him again and feed him, because all I want to get across to him is that when you lead right here in this position, then that's perfect. That's what I want. I just want you to follow me here. So I stopped. He listened. I'm going to click him and feed him for that. That little session right there, like that really part of the video where he led forward and then stopped, it was really perfect. That's what I was looking for. So right here, this is really nice. He's a little distracted and put a little pressure on him. good. And he didn't run off. He just kind of picked his head up and kept going. So that was really good. That's exactly what I wanted. He was a little confused in the beginning. You could see him trying out different things, like, do you want me to lunge? Do you want me to go this way? Like, what do you want? He wasn't real sure, but him targeting my hand really helped him figure it out. So that's really awesome. Now he's just following my body language, which he was first introduced to him in the previous lesson where I was just leading him while I walked backwards while he was following. So now I have him follow me while I get him up to the mounting block here. I want to start introducing the mounting block so I can start touching him further down on his body. I like to have the block just kind of in between me and him. It gives him a bit of a marker, like a visual of where to stand and then like what behavior we're going to do at that location. So I just want him to come to the mounting block, stand still, and then I just pet him here and I reward him for me petting him. So there I kind of petted down his back and I'll click him and feed him. So he's used to being pet up on his face, his neck, his chest, and then somewhat down his legs, probably like halfway down. Right here, like down his belly. It's all new territory, so I'll click him there and feed him for that. So all I'm going to do is kind of expand out a little bit with some approach and retreat, and then once my hand gets further down, like it's going to get down on his knee where I've not touched before, I'll click that and feed that. So I'm going to just do that throughout his whole body, but I'm going to do it in different phases. So we don't need to do it all in one day. I'm just going to work my way down. Like the first time I touched his knee, then I went all the way down to his fetlock. So we're just kind of gradually progressing. I just want to make sure my horse is calm and he's not worried about me touching him anywhere, and he's not going to run away or try to kick me or do anything crazy. So all this stuff is very positive, but he seems very relaxed. His neck's nice and level. He's still chewing. So I think the positive reinforcement, especially for the Mustangs here that are afraid, is really beneficial. So I think that's pretty cool. But I'm just going to let him just hang out here and let me pet on him a little bit. And I'm going to move my hand around in different places. If your horse is a little bit more worried than this, I'll just kind of stick on one location. You might have to break it down a bit more, and just as soon as your hand gets close to your horse, click, and then touches, click, and then move on to petting. I had to do that with Castor, which I will eventually edit his videos, but he was a lot more sensitive to touch than Atlas was. So he's going to be a little bit faster. Atlas is a little bit faster here. And then obviously some are going to be even more quiet than Atlas is as far as being touched, and you probably could touch them all in one session. Each horse is different, but this is the method that I use for it, and it seemed to work out pretty good because I want to keep, especially me being so close to him, I really want to keep that a really positive association. I don't want him to be afraid and try to run away and kick out and do things like that. So the mounting block is just for safety too. And really in this position where I'm at now, I mean, he's probably going to run away before he tries to do anything else, but you just don't know. So where I'm standing kind of at an angle to his shoulder, I'll try and stay there. So I'm just trying to reach down and keep my body in that position just to make sure that I'm going to be safe. And I have touched his body with the whips and like different whips and sticks and things before I go ahead and start touching him with my hand. So reach down his foot. So I've gotten all the way down his leg, and I've really reached back under his belly and pretty close to his flank. So he's doing pretty good with that. And he really hasn't changed his body language at all. So I'm pretty happy with all of those things. And I'm just going to pet him in places like on his mane there and down his neck where he's used to me already touching him while he eats a little bit, just to kind of show him like, same kind of thing. I'm going to pet you here. I'm going to pet you in a different place. And it's not a big deal. A lot of people just assume that all horses like to be touched. It can be difficult because a lot of domestic horses do like to be touched. And to remember that, especially with wild ones, not all of them like it. It's not always a reward. So I'm just trying to line him up here to the mounting block on the other side, on his right side. And he was just a little confused. I'm just trying to kind of practice our steering with the whips, and he's like, oh, go to the right, and I'm just trying to get him lined up there, right there on his with his right side near the block. So there we go. I'll click him for positioning himself right there. I like to, obviously he doesn't have a halter and lead rope on, so I like to get him steering with the whips, because really I could do that, or I can have him target my hand. So he needs to know both skills for me. I like him to target my hand and follow, which he's really good at. But I want him to also move away from pressure. I feel like that's super important, and not be afraid of it. So that's why I'm also using the whips to get him in position for the mounting block. So again, with the desensitizing, I'm just kind of starting on his head and neck, just like I did on the other side. He's a bit quieter on his left side. His right side, he's a little bit, not really worried, but he's just a little less comfortable than he is on his left. And that's normal, because I work more on his left. I try to be as even as possible, but sometimes that's just how it is. All horses are going to have one side they like a bit better. So again, I'm doing the same thing. I work my way down his neck. Once my hand gets the furthest that it's been, I'll click and then I'll feed him. So you definitely want to make sure you click when your hand is on the horse's neck, or wherever you're petting. So if you're petting down his neck and you've gotten a little bit further than you have before, click while your hand's there, take your hand away, and go ahead and feed him. So it's opposite as you would use it in combination with negative reinforcements. Like as I'm using the whips, I immediately take the whips away as I click. This is going to be a little bit opposite, since I'm telling him, this is what I like what you're doing right now. I like that you're relaxed while I'm touching you. So that's what I'm trying to tell him. So he's just trying to put me back on the other side, because that's what he was used to. It can be a little bit, it's interesting when you have more positive reinforcement, you give him a bit more choice, because he's like, oh, I'd like you over here. And he's not being naughty or bad or anything. And I'm trying to put a little pressure on him. He's like, no, I think you're supposed to be on my left side. But it's interesting when you give him a choice, well, what they'll do. So he's not being bad. He's just saying, oh, well, you were over here, so I think that maybe you should be over there again. But I just lined him back up. And clicked him now that he's standing on the correct side. And it's interesting, because all of the horses I have in training do that. They'll just start offering these behaviors, and they're like, this is what I thought we're still doing. I'm like, no, we're not doing that anymore. We're still not side passing, or like in Atlas's case, we're still not on the left side. We need to go on the right side. But it's interesting, because then it kind of gives you a little training opportunity, because then I can put him back. So now we're working on moving off of the whips and putting him back into the other position. Or if they're just offering a behavior like side passing, I'm just going to wait and ignore that behavior, since I didn't cue it. But in other times it can be helpful. Like when I'm trying to start teaching like the side pass toward, if they're going to offer it, then I can put a cue on right before it. So it is very interesting to play with those behaviors. But we're going to work down Atlas's neck and his chest and his shoulders. And again, this is a different side, so we're going to start up on his head and his neck, and then just slowly work our way down. I'm not just going to assume, since I touched him on the left leg at the hoof, we're not going to just go touch him on the right leg at the hoof. I want to work my way down and make sure he's cool with this all the way. So there he took a little step back. If he was going to take more steps back than that, I would just kind of walk with him, because some horses will want to back up so that their face is like right near you, so they can get the food in like immediately. But he just kind of rocked his weight back a little bit, so that's okay. But I would just watch that as you're feeding and rewarding behaviors. So for this one, I maneuvered him next to the block, but not as close as I would like at the time. But I'm still in that position where I'm at a 45-degree angle from his shoulder. So I'm still up out of the range of a kick or a strike. So I'm still in a safe location. Really, I do use the mounting block all the time, but I especially use it when I'm getting closer to the hind legs and the flank. I use it a lot more there, and I make sure I have it there when I'm brushing and grooming and petting and then doing feet later on, and then I'll wean them off of that. But it does help once you start changing locations as well. Like if I want to go and brush them in the arena or in the cross ties or wherever, I can bring that mounting block with. It's just kind of like a target, and then they know that behavior happens there, and then eventually I'll take that away, and then they'll just understand that we do those behaviors anywhere. So, but it does help out a bit, and it definitely helps if they like to stand still and just like expect a treat when you go to start getting on them. So that is helpful. So he's doing pretty good. I can start reaching down his foot. He's not really moving his head around too much. His neck's not going up and it's not really tight. So I like that he's not super worried about me touching him. If you do have a horse that's a lot more worried, I would definitely start using protective contact. So have your horse on one side of the fence and you on the other. I do this with Castor. His videos will be out at some point once I edit them, but it's a little bit different because Castor was a lot different than Atlas, but it is interesting and definitely a good, safe way to also teach the same thing. But we're gonna give him this, and he did pretty good. He let me touch all the way down his legs, so we'll just end this session for today.